Welcome back. I thought I would do another one tonight. Get 32 done tonight, and then we'll have 4 more chapters after this for the book of Numbers. So we'll see if we can get done before the end of the month. It's an interesting chapter. A lot of this is historical, but there's a major point here, a major point of contention in this chapter that we're going to deal with regarding millennialism and some people who believe that God has not fulfilled his promise to Israel. And we're going to show that indeed it has been fulfilled. So sit tight. We're going to get into the book of Numbers, chapter 32 tonight. So Numbers 32 and verse 1. Now the children of Reuben and the children of Gad had a very great multitude of cattle. And when they saw the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead, that, behold, the place was a place for cattle. And the children of Gad and the children of Reuben came and spake unto Moses and to Eleazar the priest, and unto the princes of the congregation, saying, so understand, I'm going to bring this up real quick here. Reuben and Gad are part of this south camp. So Reuben and Gad, their leaders probably talked a little bit more, just naturally. They were in close proximity, and they maybe had a lot of the same habits. Obviously, keeping cattle and stuff is one of those. So they're seeing this land to the east of Jordan before they enter into the promised land, and they're like, wow, this place is really good for cattle. And so they get together. They're not conspiring in a bad way, but they get together and they talk. And they say, hey, let's go talk to Moses. Okay, and they go to Moses and they go to the rest of the princes. So this isn't just Moses here. It's all of the other leaders of the tribes. Saying that Adaroth and Dibon and Jazer and Nimrah and Heshbon and Elealeh and Shebam and Nebo and Beon, even the country which Jehovah smote before the congregation of Israel, is a land for cattle, and thy servants have cattle. So they've come here. They haven't actually entered into the promised land yet, but they've kind of taken out some people on this side who were irritating them, who were harassing them, causing them problems. And Reuben and Gad are saying, we like this land. And so they're asking if they could stay in this land, if they could build their cities here and have this as their promised land. Wherefore, said they, if we have found grace in thy sight, let this land be given unto thy servants for a possession, and bring us not over Jordan. Okay, so they want to stay here. Now remember, God has given the promised land and allotted and said, hey, this is where the promised land is going to be. But God has also created beings of free will. And God is a God who provides and who answers prayers and is willing to listen to us. And I think that's an important point here. So Reuben and Gad want this particular land over here. They don't want to cross into the land of Canaan. And God says, okay. And so remember, God is always talking through Moses here. So when Moses is speaking, he's speaking what God is wanting him to speak. And so Moses at first gets angry. And this is of course Moses' anger. God's kind of listening, sitting in the background, waiting to see how this plays out here. And so Moses gets angry, and then God's going to come in and say, no, it's okay. You tell them this, and they can do it. So Moses said unto the children of Gad and to the children of Reuben, shall your brethren go to war, and shall you sit here? So remember, the question is look, we've already come in and we've taken these lands. And all of us worked together to take these lands. And now you're just going to stop. You're just going to sit here, and then you're just going to leave the other 10 tribes to go do the war without you? Is that what your plan is? And Moses is upset about this because he sees that this is very much like what happened 40 years ago when they were going to move into they sent the spies in. The spies came back, and 10 of the tribes gave a bad report, and it scared the children of Israel. And so he sees the same thing happening here. He says, wherefore discourage you the heart of the children of Israel from going over into the land which Jehovah has given them? He's afraid that this is history repeating itself. Thus did your fathers when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. For when they went up into the valley of Eshcol and saw the land, they discouraged the heart of the children of Israel, that they should not go into the land which Jehovah had given them. And Jehovah's anger was kindled at the same time, and he sware, saying, Surely none of the men that came up out of Egypt from 20 years old and upward shall see the land which I swear unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, because they have not wholly followed me. Now this is not God speaking now. This is Moses recounting what God had said 40 years in the past, when the spies came back and told all the children of Israel, and they were all like, no, we can't take the giants, we're too scared. We have an all-powerful God on our side, but we're still scared of giants. So now Moses is recounting what God had said at that time. And so he says, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and the Kenizzite, and Joshua the son of Nun, for they have wholly followed Jehovah. So remember, there were two guys of the spies that said, no, we can do it. And again, Moses is recounting that time, and he says, and Jehovah's anger was kindled against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness for 40 years, until all the generation that had done evil in the sight of Jehovah was consumed. And behold, you were risen up in your father's stead, an increase of sinful men, to augment yet the fierce anger of Jehovah toward Israel. So you remember all of this. You were kids at the time. You were younger than 20. And now you're repeating your father's mistakes, and you're just going to make God even angrier by repeating those same sins. Why are you doing this? For if you turn away after him, he will yet again leave them in the wilderness, and you shall destroy all those people. So Moses is like, why are you being like this? God's going to turn them back out into the wilderness again, because of you're going to make them afraid. They're all going to be stuck out in the wilderness again, and they're all going to die. And we're going to have to go through a whole nother 40 years. And I'm not going to be here. God's already said that my death is upon me. Is that what you want? And so the captains of Reuben and Gad, they're like, hold on, Moses. Let us speak. And they come near unto him and said, we will build sheepfolds here for our cattle, and cities for our little ones, for our children. But we ourselves will go ready armed before the children of Israel. That means we're gonna go to war. And not only that, we're gonna march, we're gonna be at the front of the battle. If you let us have these lands, our vow to you is that we will go first, to show that this is, that we're not trying to get out of battle here. We just like this land, but we're in it all the way for the whole nation. So we're going to go armed before the children of Israel until we have brought them unto their place, and our little ones shall dwell in the fenced cities because of the inhabitants of the land. So they're gonna stay here. They're going to spend a little bit of time. They're going to build up fortifications. They're going to build places for their sheep and their cattle, and then they're going to leave their wives and their children and their servants, and the men are going to go off to war. And they are going to do that. Verse 18, we will not return to our houses until the children of Israel have inherited every man his inheritance. So that's their vow. And this is the big point I wanted to make about the millennialist idea and those who think that Israel still has a part to play in human history. Reuben and Gad said, we are not going back to our houses until the children of Israel have inherited every man his inheritance. So these men are going to go off to war, leaving behind their families until the promised land is taken and the way that God said that it was supposed to be taken. And the millennialists have come along and they have said, well, we believe that the river of Egypt is the Nile, and that God has not yet fulfilled the land promise to Israel. And because God has not yet fulfilled the land promise to Israel, we feel that Israel is going to be brought back together, that the temple, there's going to be a third temple rebuilt in Jerusalem, and then we believe that all of the things of Revelation, the book of Revelation, pertain to a yet future time And they go to Matthew 24 and 25 and all of it, and they apply that to the future, and they look at Daniel and apply that to the yet future, and there's all these things that is essentially a very selfish look at the scripture. They're interpreting it as if it was written to people that lived during the 21st century and during the 20th century when millennialism was getting really big, and even as far back, millennialism is not that old. It's my understanding that millennialism began in the 1800s, and so the people who interpret it that way say that God has not yet fulfilled His promise to Israel. Several problems with that, and we can deal with the majority of those problems another time. The first biggest problem is that the entire Old Testament is fulfilled. It was fulfilled by the end of the first century. That system is gone out of the way, completely kaput, fulfilled. And we can talk about what that means and the implications of that, and how some of the New Testament passages like Matthew 5, 17 and 18 and all of that discourse and all of that kind of stuff was fulfilled already. Because there's contentions with those. I don't want to say problems, because there's not problems, but there's contentions that people have about those passages. But right here is a major problem. These men are going off to war, leaving behind their families, saying we're not going to come back to our families until everybody's got their inheritance. Well, did everybody get their inheritance? Or did these men ever get to go back to their families? And the answer is yes. Yes, they did. We see that promise fulfilled in the book of Joshua. Like everything that God had promised to them is fulfilled by the end of the book of Joshua. Because Joshua doesn't take place over a very long span of time. And so these men are able to go back to their families, to their wives, to their children, and the war is ended. That the prosecution of the land of Canaan, all of the inhabitants are driven out or destroyed, and these men get to go live their lives as promised. And so for somebody to come along and say, was the land promise fulfilled? Their oath required them, Reuben and Gad, to stay at the forefront of the fighting until the whole promised land was taken. Well, that's 1,500 years of time. If that hasn't been fulfilled even yet, there was 1,500 years where the tribes of Israel, and later just Judah, after the split of the kingdom and stuff, where they should still be at the forefront taking the promised land. But we see that they stop fighting and they stop trying to take the promised land because it gets fulfilled. And then of course the Reuben and Gad are part of those northern 10 tribes. They get taken into Assyrian captivity and then dispersed, and we don't ever see them anymore after that point. And they've still got more than 500 years to go to get to Jesus. And so the timing of this is just nonsensical to say that Reuben and Gad were bound by this vow for generations upon generations, the vow never got completed. It just doesn't make any sense. Because these guys expect, they have such faith in God, they expect God's promise to be fulfilled in their lifetime so they can go back to their families. And it's just one of those many things that the denominations of the world and their strange theologies like millennialism have to deal with, and I haven't heard any answer to this. They just make stuff up, and they don't have the ability to deal with things like this. Reuben and Gad should still be at the forefront of the fighting, according to the millennialist doctrine. It's just nonsensical. Anyway, they continue on. It says that we're not going to return to our houses, but verse 19, for we will not inherit with them on yonder side of Jordan or forward, because our inheritance has fallen to us on this side of Jordan eastward. This is where we're going to stay. And Moses said unto them, if you will do this thing, if you will go armed before Jehovah to war. So now this is where Moses is kind of speaking with the authority of God. God's allowing him to do this. And will go all of you armed over Jordan before Jehovah, until he hath driven out his enemies from before him. See, Moses is laying this on him, but he's speaking for God. And the land be subdued before Jehovah, then afterward you shall return. Not your children fighting in your place to keep your vow, not your children's children, not 1,500 years down the road. You shall return and be guiltless before Jehovah and before Israel, and this land shall be your possession before Jehovah. So Moses says it's going to be fulfilled in your lifetime. So in this particular generation that's speaking right here, the land promise gets fulfilled. Every man gets his inheritance according to God's promise, based on that. And I was listening to the last one to make sure the audio was working. Totally forgot I had my headphones on, so I feel silly now. Whatever. But anyway, Moses is very clear that if they'll do what they said they were going to do, then after your vow is complete, after what you said you were going to do is completed, you get to return, and God's not going to hold. You're going to be guiltless. You've completed what you said you would do. But then he says, but if you will not do so, God's promises are conditional, always. So he said, if you do what you were supposed to do, then yes, you can return to your families, return to your land guiltless. But if you will not do so, behold, you have sinned against Jehovah, and be sure your sin will find you out. Okay, so Moses gives the conditions. If you do it, great. If you don't, it's in God's hands, and he's going to do with you as he wills. And we know that Reuben and Gad, in fact, fulfilled their vow, and they complete what they were supposed to do. And we'll get to the book of Joshua eventually. It says, build your cities for your little ones, and folds for your sheep, and do that which hath proceeded out of your mouth. All right, so he said, go ahead, go do it. And we're dealing here. We're in that 40th year of wandering here, so they're about to cross into Jericho, and cross the Jordan and do battle in Canaan. So this isn't something that takes years and years and years to do. There's thousands upon thousands of them. So you can imagine the idea of the barn raisings and stuff. They go in and they just kind of sweep through and they construct everything in a very short amount of time. And the children of Gad and the children of Reuben spake unto Moses, saying, thy servants will do as my Lord commandeth. Talking about Moses. Our little ones are wives, our flocks, and all our cattle shall be there in the cities of Gilead. And the reason they have to be in Gilead is they've taken that land, but they have not taken the land of Bashan yet, which is north. And we read about the land of Bashan later on. But the servants will pass over, every man armed for war, before the Lord to battle, before Jehovah to battle. I don't know, that word of the Lord there is not the all caps. So I wonder if that's Jehovah or if that's just Adonai. I'll have to look that up. Let's look it up. So Numbers 32:27. Didn't even see that when I was looking through this earlier. So Numbers 32 verse 27. And okay, so it's all caps here. It's just not in the Bible Gateway. So that's going to be Jehovah or Yahweh. Yeah, so Jehovah right there. Anyway, so they're going to go before Jehovah and to battle as my Lord. And you can see the difference here. As my Lord, Adon or Adonai. Well, you guys don't read Hebrew, so. But anyway, as my Lord, Adonai says. So we're talking about we're going to go before Jehovah into battle as Moses had said. So concerning them, Moses commanded Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the chief fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel. So Moses is like, look, I'm not going into the promised land. God's going to take my life here. I've lived 120 years. I'm done. I'm not going in with you. But guys, y'all are going to be in charge after I'm gone. So you need to listen because y'all are the ones that are going to see to this. And Moses said unto them, if the children of Gad and the children of Reuben will pass over with you, over the Jordan, every man armed to battle before Jehovah, and the land shall be subdued before you, then you shall give them the land of Gilead for a possession. So, hey, this is the deal. And remember, Reuben and Gad are there talking to all of them simultaneously. It's not just Moses and the two princes of these two tribes. It's Reuben and Gad before all of these. And so Moses is turning to the guys that are going to be in charge after he's gone and say, look, if they do what they said, then they get to have this land that they want over here. But if they will not pass over with you armed, they shall have possessions among you in the land of Canaan. So they get the original land promise in the land of Canaan if they don't follow through. And, God was going to deal with these men of this time for their wickedness, for not following through with their vow. So that's essentially what's going on here. But note the way that God is working with them and allowing them to kind of alter the deal in their favor. They like this land, and there isn't a sin or obedience or a need for Reuben and Gad to be in the original land of Canaan. That God can't just say, okay, you like this over here better? Fine, that's fine. And I like that. I like that. What it shows to me when I'm reading this is that, number one, God doesn't have an absolute detailed map, kind of like what the Calvinists teach of that he's decreed every single thing, that he has meticulously plotted out the course of human history down to the very desires that we have, that God has an original plan for these guys to be in the land of Canaan, but they come and they talk to God through Moses and say, can we have this over here? And what that shows to me is that our prayers are effective. That if God has a certain direction that he's going with things, that we can pray to God, that we can talk to God, and we can change his mind. So God has free will just like we do. We're created in his image, and part of that is our free will. But if you believe that everything is meticulously decreed, that everything is set out in a, God has a specific, absolute plan for everybody, and we're just kind of going through the motions, what is the point of prayer? What purpose does prayer serve to pray to God and ask for anything, to ask for him to forgive us of our sins, to ask for things that we need, to ask for healing, all of the things that we pray for? What's the purpose? If God has meticulously planned everything out, kind of like with the plan of the promised land. Now, this gets in, of course, to God's foreknowledge and omniscience and stuff like that, and I think that's maybe beyond the scope of this particular video, but in terms of what God has laid out and mankind able to converse with God and ask for things, God certainly can say yes. And I think this is just a perfect example of that. And this is, people are going to frame this chapter differently. And I think that if they frame this differently, especially the Calvinist, I would be interested to see how Calvinist frames this chapter. But as for me, what I'm seeing here is that God is willing to listen to us and give us the things that we ask for. So that was pretty powerful for me in terms of the message of this chapter, applying it to our lives and stuff. Anyway, verse 31, and the children of Gad and the children of Reuben answered, saying, As Jehovah has said unto thy servant, so will we do. We will pass over armed before Jehovah into the land of Canaan, that the possession of our inheritance on this side Jordan may be ours. And Moses gave unto them, even to the children of Gad and unto the children of Reuben, and unto half the tribe of Manasseh. So when I originally read this, I read that this is unto the half tribe of Manasseh, but that's not the case. It's half of the half tribe of Manasseh. And if you look at the maps, the way that, and this could be one of those things that people are like, contradiction. It's not a contradiction. Half of the half tribe of Manasseh is going to get this land over here, in terms of where things are. Now, I have a photo of this. I brought this up. You can see, so Reuben wants this here with the Ammonites. Gad wants this here. And then up here is Bashan. This is where Og, the king of Bashan, he was one of those giants, the pretty tall guy like Goliath. He's actually taller than Goliath is supposed to have been. So half of Manasseh is going to go up here, and the other half of Manasseh is going to go over here. So half of the half tribe is going to get this area. I don't know how they divided out the land. I don't know why. You can see Dan gets this little portion here, and then way over here is also Dan. So some of them got split up. I don't know how the tribe divided up their land. Obviously, there was not this equality of people versus land, and it had to do with the families and family sizes more than anything. You know, some people are going to have a whole lot of children and big families, and so maybe they got more land because of that. And some of them did not get they did not have big families and whatever. And you can see Judah, Simeon, and Judah. And so it's just this interesting way that the lands all got divided up. But this is the promised land. You can see here the river of Egypt. This is all what they typically call the Sinai Peninsula. This is all referred to as the land of Egypt, and there is a river right here that's still there in modern day. That's the river of Egypt, and you can see that it borders the southern part of the Promised Land. So when they came out and they crossed the Red Sea, well, that was silly. I'm trying to scroll down like it's some web page or something. But way down here, this is the Red Sea that they cross into the Sinai area. And Sinai, the Mount Sinai's out here, the wilderness of Paran, Kadesh Barnea, and they go up through the land and whatever. So you can see where the land was divided. And so half of Manasseh is going to end up with this when they take out Og. Gad is given this. Reuben is given this with the Ammonites. And that's just what they were asking for. And so Moses gave unto half the tribe of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan. So the land with the cities thereof, and the coast, even the cities of the country round about. So those are the two parts of Manasseh. So this is the Amorites, this is Bashan with Og and whatever, and so you can see that they split part of it over by the coast. All right. And the children of Gad built Dibon and Ataroth and Aroer and Atroth, Shophan and Jazer and Jogbehah and Beth Nimrah and Beth Haran, fenced cities and folds for sheep. So they're building up these city-states here within the kingdom of Israel. And the children of Reuben built Heshbon, and these are cities that already exist, but were kind of sacked during their attacks into this area. And so the children of Reuben built Heshbon and Elealai and Kirjath Aim, and Nebo and Baal-meon, and their names were changed. Okay, so this is what they were originally called, and Shibma, and gave other names unto the cities which they builded. So they changed their names, but this is what they were known at the writing of the book of Numbers. And the children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, went to Gilead and took it and dispossessed the Amorite which was in it. So understand, part of the book of Numbers is a recounting of things that had already happened. We're gonna re-see some things in the book of Deuteronomy, and we're gonna re-see some things in the book of Joshua that make it difficult for us reading straight through to get a good timeline of when these things were. So I may, after we get done with Deuteronomy, I may do a recap of the timeline for the events, and there's actually a recap here in the book of Numbers itself, but just to kind of help us frame the time frame when these things were happening. But Numbers was written kind of towards the end here. Remember, Moses is writing this. So these are things that in the last few weeks of his life, Numbers is being written. Book of Numbers is being written. The book of Deuteronomy is being written. But again, I believe that Leviticus was written early on, and during their journey, during their wandering. There's no reason that Leviticus couldn't have been written first, and that provides the kind of the foundational laws. Genesis could have easily been written during this time of wandering. Exodus could have been written during this time of wandering. And then as they start to approach the end of their wandering in the wilderness, Numbers and Deuteronomy could have been started with different purposes in mind towards the end of this march. And there's no reason Moses had to begin like right here at the end. Oh my gosh, I'm going to die here in about 5 days. I better write these 2 books down on later. He could have started both of those books a little bit earlier on when those events took place. Excuse me. Kind of journaling as he goes along, but he finishes them up. He wraps them up before he dies. He finishes them off before he dies, and I think that the book of Deuteronomy actually records his death, and I think that the book of Deuteronomy is actually finished off by Joshua, if I remember correctly. So anyway, verse 40, let's finish up here and then we'll be done with the chapter. Moses gave Gilead unto Machir the son of Manasseh, and he dwelt therein. And Jair the son of Manasseh went and took the small towns thereof and called them Havoth Jair. So Jair, you can see these guys naming these places after themselves. And Noba went and took Kenath and the villages thereof and called it Noba after his own name. So he took Kenath and renames it to Noba after his own name. And so these are the areas that are for Reuben, for Gad, and for half of Manasseh on this side of Jordan. And you can see some of it they've taken already. Some of it it's given to them, and they go and they just take them right then. They say, let's go ahead and let's take these guys out. So you see that some of this was precursor. They see the land they wanted, so they go in and take it, and have taken it yet. Some of it they'd already taken or whatever in earlier skirmishes and whatnot. So we're going to finish out with the book of Numbers. I'm not going to do any more tonight. It's after midnight. So, but that's Numbers 32, and a very interesting chapter. Not something 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I was in high school, that I would have read and looked at and said, wow, this is so interesting. I wasn't mature enough to read through these books and get out of them what I'm getting out of them through this study. And so I'm very, very excited now to be reading through the book of Numbers. It's not boring for me at all. It's very eye-opening to be able to read these chapters like this and get these deeper meanings out of what's going on here and all of this. So I hope you're feeling the same way. Again, if you like what you see, subscribe, hit the little notification bell to get notifications whenever I put up any more of these. Leave comments, contact me, and let's talk these things out if you have any disagreements. I love talking about the Bible, and I appreciate you watching all the way through this, and you guys have a wonderful night.